I disencourage a lot of companies from scaling. Whenever you get your first line of managers, your margins go significantly lower and you go through a valley of death that takes you to around 60 or 70 employees. The ones that have the best quality of life and good money, 10, 12, 15 employees, no more than that. As an entrepreneur, once you get to around 10 in assets, you have to take the decision, is this enough? Can I take the chips off the table? Or are you going to put risk on and risk those 10 million and go beyond to try to do an asset that is worth more? It's very important that you analyze your life around there.
Hi, David here. Just want to give you a brief intro into this week's podcast. It's a follow-up from last week. So if you missed last week, you ought to go back and catch it. Now you can jump into this one today and you'll get context, but get the whole interview. This was the interview I did with my good friend, my mentor, magnanimous entrepreneur, Mr. Daniel Marcus. He has an international background, a flavor. He sees the big picture. And this week, we started off by Daniel talking about the different stages of business. Stage 1, which is typically a startup. Stage 2, which is more of a lifestyle business. It's growing. You've got stability. You may have employees from 6 to 15 in number. And then stage 3, which is what everybody seems to always want to get to. I want the bigger business. I want to grow it. I want to create equity. I want to be able to have a big exit. I want to have the multiple hit. Well, going from stage 2, a lifestyle business, to a stage 3 has a lot of minefields in it. Now, it's not to say you can't do it, not to say other people haven't done it, but you need to be aware of the danger zones in scaling without any type of real intentionality. What do you really want? Daniel goes into quite a bit of detail there, and we'll give you some insights about how he looks at the different stages of business today and where he's going to go next. He believes that stage 2, for most people, not all, but stage 2, where you have 10 to 12, maybe 13 or 14 or 15 employees, is an ideal place to be, because you could actually get to your freedom number, which is what we talk about in Freedom Founders, your freedom number at that level of business, and you can continue to live that business and have a business that is not dependent upon you, that actually, the business serves your lifestyle. When you go to scaling a business, and I've talked to many entrepreneurs who have done this, yeah, they're making a lot of money, they may have a lot of equity, but the constraints it puts on their lifestyle, their business, their family, their marriage can be immense. So going bigger has a lot of risk. It has a lot of drama, a lot of brain damage. You have to decide, is it worth it? At least be aware of the pitfalls before you decide to dive in. We talked about harvesting equity. So when you have equity in a business or businesses or in real estate or other asset classes, when is the appropriate time to harvest equity? Take some chips off the table. What do you do with those chips? When do you do it? What considerations do you need to make? We talked about that. The big question typically for people in the entrepreneurial space is, do I have enough? How do you know you have enough? Well, have you actually learned how to orchestrate real cash flow, income from the assets that you own? That's a key. That's a key construct. Private equity partnerships. Big play out there today in a lot of industries, certainly in the healthcare industry, in dentistry, veterinary medicine, optometry, vision. Private equity is consolidating big time. If you're in one of those arenas, you know what I'm talking about. The lure for jumping in and getting that high multiple, but where you typically have to give up a majority interest in your business first, kind of what we call the first bite of the apple, and then fingers crossed, hope for the second bite, while at the same time you've lost control of your business. Now, I'm not saying this can't be done. It has been done, but it's fraught with, again, dangers. Daniel also talked about the book, The Fourth Turning, a great book if you haven't picked it up. It talks about the 80-year cycles and where we are right now, actually in a cycle of the winter, but we're trying to play like we're in a summertime economic situation. It's fake. It's not real. You've got to understand that and where the disconnects are between reality and where we really are in our economic cycles. Daniel talked about the fact that the next decade has the potential to be very complex and very volatile, not at all like the decade that we just left coming out of 2020. The U.S., we talked about the lack of political will to be a superpower and police the rest of the world. What does that mean? The U.S. as the reserve currency, can we maintain that? What if we don't? Daniel talked about the taxation in the U.S. versus Canada, where he's lived, and also Mexico, the differences there, and how you can utilize the ambiguity in the voluminous amount of code in our current tax code, but you have to be astute. You have to find the right people. You have to have the right advisors between you. There is a belief from Daniel's standpoint, again, being very international, that there's a lot of resiliency in the U.S. I'm pro-U.S. Even though we're going through some major shifts right now, generationally, societally, I still believe in the resiliency of our country, still the core values, which unfortunately have been lost on the younger generations. But I believe that there's going to be an awakening at some point, a reset, and I'm optimistic that it'll be a positive reset. Daniel's the same way. He says the U.S. is the best of the worst. What's that saying? Well, where else would you go? Where else? I thought about where else would I want to retain citizenship? I don't know. I want to be where I speak the language, where I understand the culture. As much as there's things that I don't like, I might want to just stay here. So I would say the bottom line to our sessions with Daniel is, how do you, as a individual, as a business owner, as a family, head of household perhaps, how do you maintain your freedom for your family and your legacy? We can't control the outside world, the external forces, but what we can do is control how we are proactive, getting ahead of it, and defensively how we posture ourselves for what we see coming down the road, even though we can't have a perfect crystal ball. I believe that the resiliency, the adaptability, proactive positioning, having enough margin in your business, your cash flows, and having a network that will provide you with a backdrop, the board of advisors, the economic freedom and adaptability to do business with people you want to do business with. I think those are the keys. I hope you'll enjoy my sessions with Daniel Marcus.
Let's talk a little bit about the stages of business. You just mentioned a couple stages. Why don't you talk through that a little bit, and what you see through your lens of coaching all stages, kind of the life cycle, and maybe where a lot of our people here with their stages, there's always this desire, and I know the book Scaling Up is very well written and it's very solid, but kind of what is it about scaling up? When should we decide to scale up? Because it seems like, Daniel, especially when the economy is running hot right now, that it's like, well, bigger and bigger is better. If I can expand operations, I can have more practices, more businesses, and just why shouldn't I do that? So give us a little bit of your insights into that conundrum that I see a lot of people get into.
So today, even though our business is called Scaling Up and we teach Scaling Up, I disencourage a lot of companies from scaling. For me, you start scaling around 16 to 20 employees. Why? Because that's when you have to start your first line of managers. And whenever you get your first line of managers, your margins go significantly lower, and you go through a valley of death that takes you to around 60 or 70 employees. I'm doing a scale up today. We've been on the Inc. 5000 4 years in a row, have 35, 40 employees, growing 50% this year and stuff. I know that my next company will not be a scale up. It's going to be a stage 2, and I'm going to stay at less than 10 employees, 10, 12 employees. I really believe the best combination, 10 to 12 employees, don't go above that. That's as much as you could handle in a family way. You know everyone by name, you could hug them, know their family, and you get a lot of money. You could get a big chunk of money of the profits without having to go beyond that. If you go beyond the 12, 15 employees, it's because you're going to build an asset that will have an intrinsic value that you're going to be able to sell. I'll tell you a quick story. The other day I was giving this lecture, and this entrepreneur from England texted me after and said, "You just explained my last 5 years of my life in the last 10 minutes. He said, I had 225 employees. I was making 25 million a year. I was losing 2 or 3 million a year, and I was miserable. I hated my life. And one day I said, I'm done. I'm going to implode my business." He went down to 16 employees. He does 7 million in revenue and nets 3.5 million. He said, I'm a happy fish. I take 4 months of vacation a year. I make way more money, and I don't need to have a really big business. So I really believe that after, let's say, 10, 15 employees, if you're going to go past that, it's because you're going to build an asset that is going to be able to be sellable in the market for a premium for all the money and drama you're going to put in. And once you get to around 50, 70, now that's when private equity comes, and that's when they want to buy your business. And interestingly, talking about freedom, that's when you pass your freedom point. And by the way, very few people in the world need more than 5 or 10 million in the bank. If you have 10 million in the bank, by the rule of 4%, that gives you 400,000 for life. If you're going to grow your business past 50, 70 employees, now it's risk on. The 10 million, you already own it. You just need to liquidate it. If you pass that, you put at risk the 10 million. I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs having 100, 150 employees, and then the company goes under because of a market condition or a mistake or something, and they lose everything. And their houses are mortgaged, the cars are leased, and now they get into trouble. So I really believe that stage one is kind of a startup, understanding where you are. Stage two, it's, let's say, 6 to 15 employees. That's the pre-scaling stage. And you could say, I'm on my way to stage three to build an asset, or build a lifestyle business, very, very profitable. And from all the companies that I coach, the ones that have the best quality of life and good money, 10, 12, 15 employees, no more than that. If you start passing that, your margins begin going lower, and what's the typical decision? Oh, I need to grow more so I can get my margins more. You grow more, you have to hire more employees, and your margins go even smaller.
And the risk factor goes way up.
And the risk goes much higher.
Yeah. So let's talk about taking chips off the table. Harvesting assets,
Yep.
harvesting equity. When and how should people look at that?
So first, you could have a business that will give you a good lifestyle and cash you $500,000, $1 million a year, 10, 12 employees very easily. And a lot of people said, fine, but I want to do an asset that I could sell. And that's when they started growing the business. The first discussion that really gets to your mind and your partner's mind is whenever your part of the business worth, let's say $5, $6 million. Because if you cash out at that moment, you could be set for life, right? Mm-hmm. And that's when the conversations start happening with your partner. And saying, hey, you know what? You work 15 hours a day, you don't see your kids, you come to the house with a lot of stress, you have to mortgage the house to finance the business. Why don't you sell it and put everything in real estate, get 10, 12% a year, done. But you can't imagine how many of those calls I get from the entrepreneur saying, hey, I just had a call with my spouse, and my spouse is asking me to sell the business. I don't want to sell it, I love my business. And that's when a discussion starts in the family, really big. Because the other person in the family doesn't like the drama, doesn't like the long hours, would like to spend more time with you, but they said it's not worth it. If you sell it today, we have enough. So usually discussions start there. And that's precisely what private equity starts, and that's how they know the game. Whenever anyone is doing 10 million of revenue in the US, you start getting calls from private equity. And they call you and say, hey, you've done a great business, you should take some chips off the table, you could retire, blah, blah, and that's when the conversation starts. And it's tough, because they tell you, hey, we'll get 50 or 60% of the business, we'll put $10 million on your account, you don't have to worry, and together we'll grow the business. Yes, you have the 10 million in the bank, but the drama, when you get with private equity and all that, it's really, really big. I get hired a lot by private equity funds that after they invested in a company, they have a really big fight with the entrepreneur, and they call me to kind of help and clean things out. And the other day, the entrepreneur was really mad that this private equity was screwing him. And I told him, they're not doing it now. You accepted that 3 years ago when you signed. Today is just a reflection of what you signed 3 years ago. When you signed the agreement, you gave them a majority, you accepted to have a board, they have majority. Don't complain today. Oh, but they told me they were going to be very nice and I was going to have all the control of my business. And I was like, yeah, that's their job.
Yeah.
But that's what happens. So as an entrepreneur, once you get to around 10 in assets, in an asset, you have to take the decision, is this enough? Can I take the chips off the table and then come to a place like this and invest it and be set? Or are you going to put risk on and risk those 10 million and go beyond to try to do an asset that is worth more? But I've talked with a lot of entrepreneurs and said, okay, imagine you get 20, you get 30. Are you going to buy a boat? Are you going to buy a plane? Like, how's your life going to change from having 10 to 20? And they look at me and say, like, nothing. I could probably take 1 more week of vacation to Italy, but that's it. It really, very few will change their life. So it's very important that you analyze your life around there. And if you could get, let's say, 10 invested the way you could invest it here, you're more than set for life. And that's when you have to have that conversation.
Or you could keep a business that you love, that you like,
but don't scale it.
And don't sell it.
Don't sell it, but
Yes.
don't try to scale it because you have to scale it.
Right. Yeah.
The thing is, very few entrepreneurs have the discipline to say, hey, the business gives me enough. I'm happy the way it is. I'm going to run it like this and cash flow it. We always said, oh, if I'm making $1 million with 10 employees, I'm going to make 2 when I have 20. And then you go to 20 and you start losing $1 million. And that's when things get interesting. And then you have to implode your business and bring it down.
Yep.
The other day I was having a call with an entrepreneur. He was doing digital products online, one of these guys that you see on the YouTube. He was doing $40 million a year. From home, all employees were subcontractors. And he hated his life. He said, I just hate my life. So I called my best client and said, you have taken all my courses. I'll give you 50% of my business. You run it. And gave it for free. And I was like, why? He said, my business is not sellable. I am the brand. It depends on me. So, but I don't like to run it. I just got married. I had a kid. I don't want to work 15 hours a day. So he gave away 50% of his business. They took it down to around 10 million a year. They still do 10 million a year, run by the partner. And he gets a couple of million a year for doing 2-3 videos a week. And he's happy camper. So if you have the discipline to stay there, great. The problem is that very few have the discipline to stay.
Very true.
If you enjoyed watching or learning from this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more content. If you have a question about any of my content or this specific video, just please leave a comment down below. And as always, stay focused on your freedom. I'll see you next time.